Let me do my job, Jimmy.
Say in your life.
I didn't say that, you did. Yeah.
How you doing?
Oh, I didn't.
And I just happened to get assigned to it.
You know, the first time, we only did about 6 hours.
It was for a few minutes. I think if Winston's here, I bet Winston just cut something on. Mine would like to probably came through.
All right, welcome everyone. Glad you're here. This is the 22nd day of July 2019. First, we have two public hearings. A public hearing on the amended annual budget ordinance for the fiscal year 2019. This is for the previous year's budget. Anyone in the audience wish to address the board at this time? Seeing none, we will proceed to our second public hearing on the zoning text amendment to amend the zoning ordinance by revisiting the uses allowable in the C1 and C2 commercial districts and to add a definition for drinking establishments. Anyone in the audience wish to address that? Seeing none, we will proceed. Is this coming my way? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll adjourn the public hearings and go directly into the regular meeting. First is the roll call.
Yes, Mayor Curley.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem King.
Here.
Alderperson Blanks.
Here.
Duncan.
Here.
Dunn. Here. Noes.
Here.
Mathis.
Here.
7.
So the chair detects a quorum, so we will proceed. We're very pleased that Reverend Don Dixon is with us this evening. Ask Reverend Dixon if he would to step to the podium and offer our invocation. Ask everyone to please stand and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Reverend Dixon, please, sir.
Let us pray. Grant us, O Lord, to always remember that how we govern is how we relate to one another. Help us to do it with honesty and integrity. Help this body to be led to do that which is for the common good. Hear our prayer, we ask in thy name. Amen.
Amen.
Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend Dixon. Appreciate you and the work that you do with the chaplains. So, I'm not aware of any commendations or certificates. Mrs. Moody has something that she'll present in just a few minutes under her report, but now we're ready for a special presentation. So, I've been looking forward to this for over a month now. I naively reached out to Jason Austin, who most all of you know, I'm sure the Public Affairs Director at AEDC. I emailed him and said, did AEDC actually have a role in the moon landing? And he wrote back this really long report. And I said, well, who could maybe come and tell us about that? Because I don't think the typical Tullahoma citizen understands that AEDC had such a significant role in that. And so he suggested that Dr. Hood would be a good one to come and give us just a brief report. And I do think it's important. The moon, I've enjoyed so much the articles it's on the news. I've enjoyed Mr. Daughtry's report on Channel 6. If you've not seen that on LightTube Channel 6, you really need to see that. That was excellent as well. The PBS series that's been on, I've enjoyed all of those as well. So I Googled today the most significant actions in the 20th century. And of course, World War I, in no particular order, World War I, World War II. The Great Depression is considered a significant major event. The computer and information technology and that revolution. The discovery of penicillin made the list. I didn't realize that, in the 20s. But then, of course, man walking on the moon and lunar exploration made the top 6 things. And maybe of all of these 6, that's the one that's going to even carry forward into future centuries as well. I don't know. We'll see. But, so we've got Dr. Hood is with us this evening. I asked him to come to the podium in just a minute after he's introduced. Sam Daughtry, who I'm sure all of you know, longtime Tullahoma resident. I was watching Channel 6 the other night, and maybe Saturday sometime, and watched a report that he gave to maybe some interns and some others, I'm not sure, at UTSI, just as recently as Friday, I believe. And then, of course, Dan and Fran Markham and Microcraft also will learn their role in the lunar landing in just a few minutes as well. So I'm very proud that these 3 individuals are with us. Dr. Hood is the historian at Arnold Engineering Development Complex. Listen to his responsibilities. I don't understand. Dr. Hood's responsibilities include building and maintaining an information network of people and SharePoint sites across the acquisition enterprise to increase AEDC/HO situational awareness and facilitate document collection, production of AEDC annual history, and new historical products, which details AEDC's role in the nation's premier ground test facility. So, anyway, Dr. Hood also has lived in numerous places around the world in his work as a historian, and he's presently the chief of AEDC History Office. So, Dr. Hood, welcome. If you don't mind, step to the podium, and we're anxious to hear from your perspective as a historian, AEDC's role in this most significant event.
The short version about what my duties are is the function of the History Office is we are the institutional memory of AEDC. So all that contributes to documenting what we did and how we did it to the best of our ability. I'd like to begin tonight with an observation. If you, like me, well, not me, actually I was born during the Apollo missions, but if you were born after the Apollo missions concluded in December 1972, for most of these people there seems to be a tendency that, of course, we went to the moon, as if it's no different than walking into a darkened room and flipping on a light switch. But I suspect if you talk to the people alive during that time, if you talk to the people who actually were testing, they'd have a far more complex answer. And it's just not something about landing on the moon, because remember, we'd never done this before. So before you land on the moon and get there, you have to work out all the tactics, techniques, procedures, manuals, everything, design the tools to actually live and work and travel in space, because it's a dangerous place out there. And you have to figure out how to rendezvous 2 different aircraft traveling at thousands of miles. And there's no such thing as a fender bender in outer space. AAA is not going to be able to respond. So even before you do that, there's one other step. You have to prove the basic thing that you can get from the Earth's surface into the Earth's atmosphere, into the orbit around the Earth. And this is where we want to start with. Slide, please. Well, actually, that's me. Little habits. Project Mercury. Now keep in mind, 1957, our adversary during the Cold War, the Soviet Union, launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite. All it did was go beep, 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 and Earth, a lot of people on Earth, especially in the Western world, that concerned because the Reds were ahead of us. And so one of the big motivations for the space program is the Cold War. You can't deny that. You can't get around that. 1958, National Aeronautics and Space Administration is founded. But by December 1959, we have Project Mercury items in our test cells at AEDC being tested. Pictured here are the original Mercury 7 astronauts. I want to point out a couple of things about them. First of all, they're test pilots, so they're used to things going wrong in aircraft. That's pretty good. So if you think about it, spacecraft is a pretty experimental aircraft. There's no 10,000 miles of, oh yes, we've seen that before. Everything is new, and they have to be able to react quickly, rationally, keep things going forward. The rocket they have was originally built for a different purpose. Put a capsule on the top there, put a human being in there. Well, testing on the ground is a lot safer, and it's a lot easier than trying to get into space and learning the hard way. So you have to learn, put the spacecraft in wind tunnels. Look at what's the configuration, what's the best configuration for the spacecraft. Is it going to be able to handle certain pressures? Another thing you're going to find out is, okay, you're going in space at a certain speed, but then eventually you want to get home, right? And you just can't say, okay, I think I'm going to land here. You have to get to a certain speed, you have to come in at a certain angle, or else it's a bad day. I wanted to orient you to the slide here. On the left is our test facility, the rocket test facility, PWT, VKF. Many of these names are very well known to you. But think about this. Every one of those test cells, look how early we are. We're going to the whole part of the Mercury program, 59 to 61. And in terms of total occupancy hours, you say only 696. Keep in mind how young AEDC is at this time. We only started in the mid-50s testing. So, but already one of our biggest customers is NASA. Our second program was Project Gemini. This is where if you want to figure out how we actually got to the moon, Gemini is one that typically gets overlooked, but you cannot deny without it, we wouldn't have not got to the moon. This is a full-scale mock-up of separation in our test cell J1. You think to yourself, 2 aircraft are separating, big deal. But I'm not an engineer, but from all the engineers I've talked to, it is a big deal, because if you don't have this thing set up properly, it's a bad day in space. Most of our support really functioned around 2 different things. Rockets, that they perform, and they perform as we need them to, and secondly, in our wind tunnels. Notice that a lot of our time was spent in rockets because AEDC is growing. We have more wind tunnels, but we're actually having the ability to test rockets, larger rockets, very important. Notice that some of our competitors, you might recognize them. Morton Thiokol, who later made the boosters for the shuttle. A lot of these are the same companies. They may change names a little bit, but they're still there. Notice this program goes from 62 through 66. Notice one of the things I want to bring to your attention is a lot of these programs are overlapping. We're not just doing Project Mercury, stop, then we're doing Project Gemini, stop. A lot of these things are overlapping, so you're dealing with a workforce that has to deal with large demands of their time from the same customer in real time, because we have a goal. President Kennedy said we're going to get to the moon and back by the end of the decade. The clock is ticking. By the time we get to Project Apollo, more test cells will come online, more support. Our workforce continues to grow as our workload continues to grow. This is a model in one of our wind tunnels here. The rocket on top of the command service module that you see up there is an escape tower. Fortunately, it never had to be used in real life for what it was designed. But one of the things I think that gave the astronauts confidence, the American confidence, is the testing done here on the ground to prove, yes, it will work if we need it to. 86 hours, 1,000 hours, total test hours for all the programs. And what I want to point out to you is here is, look, that's going the whole spectrum of test cells across AEDC. Notice also, second from the bottom, let's see if I can use the pointer here. 61. The same year President Kennedy issues his challenge to the nation, we're starting the Saturn program. One of the things that we need to keep in mind is this program, yes, we started Apollo, we started our launches in 1968, but bottom line is we're starting way earlier because we don't know what we don't know, but we have to get there to the moon. And one of the things I want to bring to your attention in closing is this. What really got us to the moon? I can give you one historian's opinion, that's just what it is. Yes, was it technology? Was it mechanics? I think it was people. It was people that conceived of a dream to go to the moon. It was people who said, I don't know how we're going to do this, but let's get started. So they got out some piece of paper, a slide rule, no calculators, remember, back in this time. So they had to really learn their arithmetic, and they started. They weren't afraid to make mistakes. They realized we want to make a mistake on the ground. And one of the things, in speaking to one of the folks that worked here at AEDC during the 60s that caught my attention was, you had people who would come and work at AEDC when they didn't have to be there because they wanted to be a part of something. They understood the national goal, and they wanted to do everything they could to make that a success. And a lot of the tests during the Apollo program that we did here weren't just a test and a launch. Sometimes they were referred to later on when there was a problem during the mission. They had test data to refer back to and make an informed decision whether or not to keep the mission going or do we need to call a halt. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions of Dr. Hood? Is it true that astronauts one of them did take a slide rule with him into space in case they needed to calculate something?
I do not know, sir.
Probably did.
Yeah. Any questions? Dr. Hood, thank you very much for being here. One of those people that you were talking about is sitting to your left. Mr. Daugherty, if you don't mind, step to the podium. Longtime resident of Tullahoma, very impressive bio. He spent most of his working career in human space flight, graduated from the University of Tennessee with a BS degree in mechanical engineering in 1962, and then from the University of Tennessee Space Institute with an aerospace MS degree in 1970. He began as a co-op student at AEDC in 1958, where he worked in testing for 22 years. He's presently employed for NASA in Huntsville. So, and when we were speaking today, Mr. Daugherty made a statement to me that was very impressive. He said that he feels that the moon landing was the greatest human technical achievement ever. Pretty impressive. Welcome, Mr. Daugherty.
Thank you very much. I'm so proud to be here, and we're still celebrating the 50th anniversary celebration. For me, it started Friday. I got to talk to a group of interns from both AEDC and students at UTSI, and my talk is personal experiences, anecdotes, stories, and doing that makes me think of hundreds of people. I think about a thing we did in a particular test cell at a time and where it was in the program, and I see all these faces of other people. So I'm telling you stories from my point of view, where I was in the middle of it, and other people that are working on it. Engineers, craftsmen, technicians. We had the best of craftsmen in our central shops involved in this program and work that I did. And we were priority 1A at AEDC at that time. Priority 1A is you got to get your stuff done first. And all of the support organizations, the central shops, the procurement, the people at the warehouse, everybody doing any service, they said when they received one of our work orders, it was a blue paint special. That is, they got to do it first. Whatever else they're doing, you drop it, do this first. That's what priority 1A is. And NASA came and occupied our facilities 1963 to 68, most particularly. So the landing itself, President Kennedy put us on that mission. I mean, we were all marching to the beat of that drum. And you're participating in a thing, you're busy, and I read after the fact, and it's George Lowe, who was Dr. von Braun's counterpart at Johnson Space Center, the Manned Spacecraft Center in Houston. What made Apollo a success was the hard work that all the people did. Just like you said, it's the people. We worked 7 days a week, so a typical day for me was sun up to sundown, Monday through Friday. Saturdays, we eased off a little bit. It was an 8-hour day on Saturday because you could do your chores at home. Sunday, we took turns taking the day off, like half of us, and the other half kind of folded in and covered, so we could go to church on Sunday. And that's the way life was. Now, we did that for a full year, and the biggest time for me started in 1965. And we were doing this big project in J4, which was the third stage of the Saturn rocket. We're going to test it with the J2 engine. We're going to do an environmental verification test. And Friday afternoon, Hugh Gardner, our boss, calls 3 of us in, and he sits us down. He starts telling us about this program. And he says, you 3 have been chosen. We're going to move your desk tomorrow. You report to work Monday morning on this new job. And the next 5 years was just fast and furious. So, backing up from where were we on Apollo 11, the day we launched? The whole team of us from J4, our work was finished. We had already done the testing. We'd worked on the problems. We had solutions. They were verified. And we're sitting as a group in a conference room just together, watching it. The landing, when that happened, was around midnight, very, very late in the night, so we were at home with our families watching. And then you'll see as they returned and did the splashdown, in another couple of days on the 24th, again, we were together watching together as a team. Just in case, what if something happens? We want to be ready. They might ask us to do something else. That was the kind of environment we were in. So, first came the first all-up uncrewed test, AS-501. It was Apollo 4. Went beautifully. Great mission. This happened, we had been a constraint to that test because in 1966, as we began testing, we found a problem. And the problem was with the translunar injection burn. That is, they get into orbit, park in orbit, they do 2 orbits, and then restart the engine to go to the moon. We got an automatic cutoff. And then they made us a constraint to that first launch. Now, the same automatic cutoff, we found it, we fixed it, that was in our test. This is test before flight. We had the solution, and we applied it when Apollo 8 flew. But there had been a second dress rehearsal flight, the S-502, 6 months after that first one, and we had a 2-engine failure on the S2 stage. We failed the S4B stage. It failed to do translunar injection. Apollo 8, that first time that Borman, Lovell, and Anders were going to fire the engine and head to the moon and leave Earth's gravity would have been a failure. We got into that one. We were asked to participate in that solution. And it happened to do with the vacuum environment as opposed to all the sea level testing that had happened before that. So we were part of that. Apollo 8 could have been a failure. The backup crew to Apollo 8 were our 3 that flew Apollo 11. So it's Neil Armstrong and Mike Collins and Buzz Aldrin. Their flight went wonderfully well. And is the success it is today. So I'm backing up from, it's like the destination, and then all the things that went into it to make it happen. J3, I was a young guy. I was learning from people that mentored me. And we did the Apollo Service Propulsion System engine test. We did the whole qualification in 6 phases over 5 years. People came here because we had the unique facilities. NASA was here, us as a test team. the engine manufacturer, the vehicle manufacturer were all working together. And Von Braun's way was, and you knew it no matter where you were in the organization, we were the government industry team. Didn't matter what badge you were wearing, we were working together. We also tested in J2A the lunar module diesel engine and the acid engine. And this is when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin got into the lunar module, descended to the lunar surface, and came back again. We rehearsed that over and over again and worked out everything having to do with it. So it stands out as probably the greatest experience of my life. And we did it here, and not so many people really realize what we did in those days for the Apollo program. Today, we're doing Project Artemis. Apollo in Greek mythology had a twin sister. Her name was Artemis. So we have another directive from President Trump, and that's to be back on the moon by 2024. And then we're going to Mars. And I'm working today at Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville. And what I get to do is mentor a lot of young people like we were back in those days. Thank you for your
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, another individual that participated at that time is our own Alderman, Jackie Duncan. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
So what was your role at AEDC during the?
I worked in a data reduction group, and Sam visited us quite often with a lot of projects. What they would do out in the test cell, they're actually testing the engine, all the J cells, or whatever cells they were running at the time. Those up there on the screen, and whatever they would test out in the test cell, they would bring us. They recorded on analog data tapes. Big old huge tapes out there, recorded a lot of data. Well, they would actually digitize those tapes, put them on just smaller reels, and digitize them and bring them to our data reduction group, which was headed by Charlie Neal. Charlie was on Piggy's Barbecue up here.
Sure.
Charlie passed just a couple of years ago. George Duncan was also my brother by another mother, and George and they call us twins, but there wasn't nothing nowhere close. And I talked to George today. George just had a heart attack, and he had some stents put in, quite a few stents. But George was our rocket man for that in our data reduction team. And of course, we did all kind of data reduction, but George was primarily head on the rocket approach of it. So we did a lot of rocket, solid and liquid rocket data reduction. And but we had a great data reduction team that we worked with those guys, and it was 4 of us in there. And we had a whole scientific computer group though, all up and down the hall. But it was just it was a great effort, and it made me feel good to be a part of it. And one thing I've always bragged about, that before it was AEDC, it was Camp Forest, and I was born in Camp Forest, and I was born in Camp Forest, worked at AEDC all my life, and retired there. So my life has been in a little circle right around this area. So it's just another feather, I think, another acknowledgement I'll add to that. The fact that we did work on this and did a lot of great work out there, I think, and it was just a great place to work at the time. So, and it's still a good place to work, I'm sure. So, but we did a lot of great stuff, and I remember a lot of nights at the Cracker Barrel. We'd go to the Cracker Barrel at 4 o'clock in the morning, or 3 o'clock in the morning, when they would have an all-night firing. But like Sam said, we worked when you worked when the power was cheap, because everybody would be home in the bed, and of course the TVA, you had to buy power from the TVA to run these big huge test facilities, and it takes a lot of electricity for that. So we test while you guys were home asleep. It worked out pretty good. So it was just a great experience, and to have been there all that.
Well, I'm just remarkably proud of AEDC and the role that AEDC played in one of these top 6 human events of that century. Is just incredible to me.
Can I say one other thing?
Yes, sir.
I launched my poetry career out there probably as a result of that. I was going in for a firing. We had a rocket firing that night, and I was going in for that, and at noon to cover the the overlap of the test. They can fire the engine, and then I was going to stay there and help and reduce the data and everything, get that for the engineers, like Sam, them to have to look at later on. Well, I got in about noon that day. I was going in and got out to UTSI, and I'd write a little poem every now and then for somebody who would decide they were going to leave. Well, big Jerry Ray, you remember Jerry Ray? Okay, big, tall guy, chewed tobacco, and he lived here in town. And he was getting ready to leave, and so I got out just about that far. We were trying to get gag gifts for him that day, and it was about noon, and I'm right at the UTSI exit there, and I'm on my way into work, and I tried a gag gift for him, and the gag gift didn't work. So I got to thinking, and so I started coming up, things coming through my mind, and I wrote a little poem on the way out there. It says, and it started out, it says, to the biggest, ugliest thing I know, I'm glad to see your ugly self go. And the poem just took on a life of itself. And by the time I got to the gate, I had it down pretty good, and I had scribbled that, I'm driving, and I never take my eyes off the wheel now, but I'm very careful about that. And I'm driving, and I'm writing. When I got to the base, I couldn't read what it was. I had to transcribe though. So anyway, when I did that and got up there and we did the luncheon, of course Charlie Neal, like I said, owned Piggy's Barbecue at the time. He catered it every now and then when we'd have somebody leaving. So we had a big Piggy's Barbecue luncheon for him and everything. Everybody got up and did their little bit, and I got up and read my poem. And after that, I had to write a poem every time somebody left. So that launched my poetry career. That's why I retired later on. After working all those hours, I decided, well, I'm going to retire early. So I retired early and to write my book. So anyway, I did write the book, and it worked out pretty good. But that launched my career right there, pretty much.
Another significant event.
Another significant event. Brings back old memories.
So everyone here, of course, knows and appreciates Fran and Dan Markham. They are philanthropists, former owners of Microcraft, and just great citizens of Tullahoma. So Microcraft also has a really neat role. So let me ask Fran or Dan or both to come and share with us an anecdote or two about your role in the lunar landing.
Thank you. And by the way, your brother, by another mother, is recovering well at home. He's one of our bridge partners that we
talked to him today.
Monday night, and he's doing fine.
Yeah.
Lane, thank you. Mayor, thank you for allowing us to come forward. I think it was not just one of the six greatest events of the last century, but perhaps since the coming of Christ, maybe one of the biggest things that man has ever done, and will be recognized in eons ahead as one of the great steps that we took. As you said, it was a small step for man. It was a great leap for mankind. I'd like to go back and talk a little bit first about the Air Force. I think the role that we just heard about is still underplayed for what the Air Force did. The Air Force was the predecessor to NASA, not NACA. NACA was the legal predecessor, but the Air Force did much of the research prior to even any kind of idea of us going to the moon. To get to 100,000 feet in a balloon was done by the Air Force, and we don't give those early folks the credit that they're some point due, but they played a great role. NASA gets most of the credit for many of the things that the Air Force did. So again, I thank all the pioneers that we had out of AEDC to do that. The most interesting story I first say about Microcraft is about Charlie Folk. Charlie Folk was the founder, but an interesting thing happened, I think it was about 1945, 1946. He was a member of an aviation club, a model club. There were about 15 of them, and they built models, the kinds of models that you would crank with a rubber band and a propeller and put it in a hangar, and they would compete those. And these model airplanes would stay up in the air for 45 minutes. The propeller going around very, very slowly. So they knew about aerodynamics, they knew about models, and they all got a letter one day from then the head of NASA announcing that if they would show up at Langley Field in Hampton, Virginia at a certain date, that NASA would hire them all. And I've never heard of anything since then that was ever done in such a bulk form. And the reason they did that is they said, we can find people who can be machinists, but we'd have a hard time finding people who really understand aerodynamics from a craftsman perspective. And we can make machinists out of aerodynamics easier than we can make aerodynamics out of machinists. And all of those guys went to work at NASA Langley in the model shop at Langley. They learned about force measuring gauges. They learned about how everything went on in wind tunnel testing. And from there, one came to AEDC, Charlie Folk. Another one went to NASA Johnson Space Center, Pudgy Parmenter. It's really Frank Parmenter, but we call him Uncle Pudgy. And the same thing happened. One went to NASA Lewis, one went to NASA Ames, and they all became sort of the craftsmen du jour of those respective sites. And they knew each other, they trusted everybody among themselves, and as a result, one of the things we did in building the Mercury program and the Apollo program that we don't necessarily do today is there was trust in other people. You knew if you were going to put a man on the moon, you had to be honest about what you did. You had to be trustworthy about what you did. And we saw such a great partnership in all those things that went on to get us there. Having said that, as far as what I think Charlie Folk did, his greatest accomplishment is, if you ever knew Evelyn Folk, Fran's mother, he impregnated her. And as a result, Fran was born. So that was by far and away, as far as I'm concerned, as far as he's concerned, today if he were living, he would say that was his greatest accomplishment. And so there we went from, when the company was formed in 1958 until 1968, when he was killed in a glider accident, tragically. And then from 1968 to 1971, it was run by Mrs. Folk. And it was, being a woman in a male-dominated aerospace industry was in itself quite unusual. So then, Fran and I came back in 1971. So it's tough for me and for us to talk about the Apollo 11 program because we were still living in Savannah, Georgia. But there was a lot of other Apollo launches that took place shortly thereafter. The Apollo 11, when the man stepped on the moon, was very meaningful to us, but all of the Apollo program was. And we did something that not many people knew about at the time, and not many people know about it today. We built many of the hardware, not just the models that were tested at AEDC, but we built flight hardware that was either used on the moon or helped get to the moon, and subsequently have flown to every geoterrestrial body that man's ever traveled to. The major claim that we make is one of the flagpoles that was made. When you unfurl a flag, in this case you actually unfurled the pole itself. Cylindrical device. To make it was not that phenomenal and not that grandeur, but the fact that it had to be done right, the fact that it had to be done correctly, and it had to happen at the right time, at the right place, is an accomplishment. As I understand it, some of our machinists actually carved their initials inside the tube that was not part of the inspection program. So to think about making something that went to the moon, that resides on the moon, is extremely, and still there, is extremely meaningful. Not just that they did it, but the support that the country had about a mission of accomplishing that. As a unit, we did that. And so those guys did that, and that flagpole's still up there. It's we say it's ours, we now say it's yours, but we built it, and that's a major accomplishment. Since then, we've made all sorts of things. We've made the moon rocks are today stored in cabinets built by Microcraft. And Ray Noas, one of our aldermen, managed an operation that we had in Houston where they did everything from building instruments to help test underwater for weightlessness, engineering. I couldn't even go about all the things that they did, but played an important role. Right here, good old Ray did that. And so,
Ray.
So
I'm going to call on him in just a minute.
Good old Alderman Ray.
That's right. Yeah.
But to have that opportunity to do that and just to be part of the team to do that is extremely rewarding to us. And for that, I'll turn it over to Fran.
Thank you, Nate.
Now, you were just a little girl when all that.
Oh, yes, sure. And you were just a little boy, not too far
See,
behind
I would have
me.
been about
Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for the opportunity to share the microcraft story. We really appreciate that. Many of the things that we work on were all top security, so we couldn't tell about it, we couldn't brag about it. AEDC couldn't either. So that's another one of the reasons things remain so closed in this town when we're doing great things. I want to invite this body and our community to step out to the Hands-On Science Center this month. They are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the landing on the moon, and several companies in our town have contributed to making this display. It will only be on for a month, I believe, so you must go see it. Another thing you must do, or I highly recommend that you do, is take a child with you to experience the Hands-On Science Center. It's a valuable resource in our community, and it puts the spark and enthusiasm and love of science and achieving in our young people's hands and hearts. And as one of the most important things of our lifetime and our century, we need to be able to pass on that story to young people who have no clue. Now, many of you in this room know the joy and the excitement and the pride and the passion to be an American, to put a man on the moon if you were alive that day. We need to pass that on to those who didn't get that jolt of enthusiasm on that day. So let's keep the young generation going and inspiring them as we go. Thank you.
That was a great story. Thank you both. Mr. Norris, I know that you were involved to some extent, and that is, Mr. Markham, was just any stories you'd like to share?
Well, it's a couple of things, three things, maybe four.
Good.
Everybody talks about, and this is from my perspective, about putting a man on the moon being the greatest achievement. In my mind, that's not the greatest achievement. I think getting those men off the moon, back rendezvousing with a vehicle around the moon, and getting them back safely on Earth 7 times? 7 times. It's without loss of life. That will, to me, is the most remarkable thing. But my perspective from my career at Microcraft, of course, I went there to Microcraft in 1968, 9 months before the lunar landing, the first lunar landing. By then, everything that was going to be on that flight for the first Apollo landing, Apollo 11, was already completed. So I can't say I touched those things because those were already in the hopper, ready to go in space. But by then, NASA was already using contractors to get the space shuttle ready for launch. Because the space shuttle was the way we had to get the space station in place in orbit around the Earth. So we were already looking at building test articles for the space shuttle. The very first significant assignment that I received at Microcraft, and yes, that was before Dan and Fran came back, was to build a space shuttle, the full stack. When I say the full stack, that includes the orbiter, the 2 externals, the external tank, and the solid rockets. Putting that together in this was about a 2.5 foot test article that wound up being tested at AEDC. And so I became enamored with the space shuttle program from my personal experience more than anything else. And we had the opportunity to be on the shuttle, on the Apollo program. We had a significant role in the Apollo Soyuz mission, which was the last S-4B launch of the Apollo, which was the rendezvous of the Apollo capsule and the Russian space capsule in 1975. That was quite an interesting program as well. We were on the hook for building the docking module, the docking collar for that. Talk about, you said you worked all day on those programs? Well, our program was if we couldn't get it done in 24 hours a day, we had to start working nights. It had to get to the Cape on time. The Russians are already up there, so we had to get ourselves there. So getting that on time was very, very critical. And with that, we were invited, the microcraft employees were invited to view that Apollo launch and see that happen in space. That was in 1975. There was not another manned mission until 1981 when we flew the first shuttle launch. And one of the highlights in my career was to be at Cape Kennedy on a Sunday morning at sunup and see the space shuttle on that 3 miles away on the launch pad, gleaming white. By the way, if you ever see the external tank on the launch pad and it's painted white, it was the first launch. They never painted another one, too much weight. So they never painted another one, but that one was all white, spotlights from every direction on it, and then it fired, it launched. We were on top of a motorhome looking at it. Dan and Fran were there, a number of employees were there, and not just on our group that was looking at that liftoff to look around, and there was not a dry eye anywhere to see that awe-inspiring sight of the first shuttle go up. Well, but to have an opportunity to touch some of the things that went into space and to know how important that program was, it made my career meaningful. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you. I think we all enjoy being a part of things bigger than ourselves, and this certainly is one of those. Mrs. Markham, we have a 20-month-old granddaughter. We went to the Hands-On Science Center on Friday. Do you know how hard it is to keep a 20-month-old attention?
Mm-hmm.
We were there for over 2 hours. She just had a big time, so. Yes?
I was just thinking, those guys that did that flagpole, they carved their initials in there. If we'd had email addresses back then, we might be hearing from the moon. Messages from there. A phone number or something. Tell them next time do the phone number thing.
Yeah. Dr. Hood, thank you very much for being here. Mr. Daugherty, thank you. The Markhams, Mr. Alderman Duncan, Alderman Norris, thank you for your comments. I appreciate everybody's patience as I just find this fascinating that Tullahoma and AEDC had a significant role in such a huge, huge event. So thank you all for being here. You're welcome to stay, or if you need to go, you're welcome to go as well. Thank you again. Appreciate all of you. Okay, comments from citizens. Any in the audience have anything to address? Seeing none, we will proceed. Ready for board reports. Mr. Mathis, please, sir.
No report tonight, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Duncan.
Thank you, Mayor. I did attend the presentation put on by TBA for through the Coffee County Industrial Board, and I attended the Coffee County Industrial Board meeting. The mayor's monthly coordinating meeting. I had a family reunion the last weekend, not the Saturday a week ago. I attended a family reunion. Those people that used to be in this area and they wound up on the other side of Nashville. We did a proclamation there one time.
Yeah.
That used to be in this area, and they had another reunion, a great reunion. So the matriarch of the family had passed. That was Oprah's favorite teacher. She died back in December, so she didn't. That was the first one without her. We had a Mount Zion, my church, Mount Zion Baptist Church, had our annual picnic down there at the park over last Sunday a week ago. There's a lot of big things going on. Davis Academy reunion is coming up, and working on that. In fact, when I leave here tonight, I'll go and we've got a program trying to get together, finalize some things. So that's pretty much staying pretty busy.
Good. I know you are. Dr. Blanks.
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. King.
No report, thank you.
I'll just say, if anybody's interested in seeing anything about astronauts, there's a Netflix documentary called One Strange Rock. It's excellent. I would highly recommend it. Besides that, we gave away 32 composters last Monday, and I meant to do my math and I didn't do it yet. But that's several thousand pounds of waste that's going to be diverted from landfills just in that one event. So if anybody didn't get a composter, I know Miss Moody picked up our very last one. She got number 32 on Monday. If anybody didn't pick one up, they are available at Public Works. So definitely would love to have some citizens do that. And not next Monday, August 5th at 5 o'clock, we are partnering with the Duck River Agency and giving away rain barrels, 25 rain barrels at our next Go Green meeting. That's 5 o'clock here at the the City Hall upstairs. And the composters, just so people know, that's through a grant program from the Interlocal Solid Waste Authority, so that's not through local funds. But yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Very good, thank you. Alderman Norris, please, sir.
Since the last meeting, I did attend the Planning Commission meeting and the Airport Authority meeting. As far as the Airport Authority meeting goes, I'll just say that we do have some opportunities for expanding our work in our air park there. That one of the current tenant, XB Services, is looking to expand. We'll be having a meeting with them next week to see just how many new hangars they'd like to have.
Wow. That's exciting. Yeah. Okay, we're ready for Mr. Worsham. Any report, please, sir.
From meeting to meeting, I don't necessarily remember what I told you the time before, so if I'm redundant, just please forgive me. But we are working on a couple of acquisition projects for the city. One of them is a donation by the Harton family to some property right next to the ball fields across from the D.W. Wilson Center on Collins Street. We're working on the deeds right now. We've done the title search. The title's clear. We should have that in the next few days. Also, some people on East Grundy Street have agreed to donate property for the sidewalk project there, but we have some property that we're going to have to acquire by purchase from property owners because there are multiple property owners who've inherited their property. We're working with planning and codes on several matters and also beginning work on the data that we need to collect with Mrs. Golden for the property tax sale. This is going to take a long time for us to put together because we're going to be involving multiple years' property taxes over a long period of time. We're working with the Coffee County Clerk and Master, who's assisting Matt in that project, and we'll have some reports from me from time to time. But we had a very successful year in property tax collections for the year 2017, and we're working on other things with the planning and code. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Mrs. Moody.
I do have two items. The first one I'll share with you tonight. We had a public meeting to inform the public about our home grant program. It's a state-funded program. We have $500,000 to help homeowners with repairs to their property. There are income limits, so it's primarily for low to moderate income homeowners. Tonight we had 45 residents come out to get information and pick up application packets. We actually ran out of business cards and applications, but we'll have more in the morning, and we'll continue getting those out, and residents will have until August 26th to complete applications and turn those in. We hope we'll be able to help at least a dozen homeowners potentially with making repairs. So thank you for all your help getting the word out. The other thing is we'd like tonight to recognize our August Employee of the Month, and I will ask for both Kurt Glick and Lyle Russell to join me at the podium.
First, I was very happy that this month's Employee of the Month was from the Recreation Department. It's Rihanna Merritt, and she was nominated by Lyle Russell, and I'll let him fill you in on the details about her, but I will say it's always a joy to see Rihanna at work. She's very enthusiastic, always has a huge smile on her face, and just makes you happy to see her there. So turn it over to Lyle.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I did nominate Rihanna. She is one of our concession staff employees. She's a shift lead in the kitchen. So she's one of the ones that deals with, aside from just the regular day-to-day operations, also if there's a customer who has an issue or minor things like that, she's the one who handles that, and she does a remarkable job of doing so. And the primary reason why I nominated her is because on several occasions, it wasn't just one instance, but over the course of the time that she's been with us, this is her second summer working with us. Anytime that we need anything, if we need a volunteer for something, or if we need someone to fill in on a shift if someone is out sick, you barely get the question out before she says, "Sure, I'll do it." Last year, she was a big help to me with our end of summer kids camp. She was my right hand during that entire time. She's already volunteered for any future ones that we do. And one of the big volunteer things that she did this year, you probably couldn't see her at the time, but she was our representative for the Girl Scouts at the 4th of July celebration. She carried the Tennessee flag when we did the stage presentation. My son Ian carried the American flag. So when I called her and asked her, I believe she was off that day or wasn't working until later. And when I asked her, the first thing I said was, I said, "Hey, does your Girl Scout uniform still fit you?" And she just kind of laughed for a second. She said, "I think so." But she didn't hesitate. When I asked her, she answered the call really quick. And so I was very, very proud to nominate her for this award this evening. So from there, I guess we will present, unless there's more.
So Rihanna, you want to come up? Thank you so much. Yeah, you're definitely one of the employees we'd like to keep, but I know it sounds like you have to get back to school, so we'll give this to you. And then also if you have anything you want to say.
Well, I've definitely enjoyed my time working for the city. This was my first job as I started last summer, and I've really, really enjoyed it. It's I'm very glad that I chose this to pursue as my first job, and I've learned a lot from it. And I hope that I can use all the skills and knowledge that I've obtained from this job for future jobs, and also within school as I go through college too.
Thank you.
My SD card's downstairs.
No paparazzi.
Be quiet, Jerry. All right, let me get my camera at least. Now, Kurt, what your first job?
Your eyes closed when I first spoke, okay? Awesome. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Mrs. Moody, thank you. Anything else? Good. All right, we've got 6 items on the consent agenda. Item number 1989, minutes of the July 8th, 2019 regular meeting. 1990, set a public hearing for Monday, August 12th on a request to rezone approximately 2.44 acres of property at 611 East Monroe Street from C2 to I2. Item 1991, set a public hearing for Monday, August 12th on a zoning text amendment to create a section of guidelines for allowable accessory uses and to add a definition for shipping containers in the zoning ordinance. 1992, approve and authorize the mayor to sign an application for a Binary Works Fund grant of $5,000 to support the Tullahoma Earth Day celebration to be held April 2020. 1993, approve an agreement between the Tullahoma Parks and Recreation Department and the District 8 Umpires Association to support the 2019 Adult League Baseball. And approve an agreement between the City of Tullahoma and Mr. and Mrs. Petrosas of Lot 75 of Macon Manor subdivision. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Second.
Proper motion by Mr. Mathis, second by Alderman Duncan. All those in favor of the consent agenda as presented, vote green. Opposed, vote red. Motion passes 7-0. We have one item of old business, ordinance number 1523, an ordinance of the City of Tullahoma, Tennessee, amending the annual budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019, for passage on the third of 3 readings. So this is the budget that it is what it is. This is last year's budget. This is the 3rd reading. And I suspect that changes have been made in payments and things like that up until perhaps even today. I don't know. But so what we need to do, we need to get a motion on the floor, and then the chair will entertain a motion to amend that will adopt the changes that are in the budget. So if I can get a motion, first of all, to approve ordinance number 1523 on the 3rd of 3 readings.
Motion to approve.
Proper motion by Alderman Duncan, seconded by Mr. Noes. All right, so we've got this before us. So now what we're going to do is the chair will entertain a motion to amend that motion to adopt the changes that are starting on page 45.
I'll move to amend.
Second.
Proper motion by Mr. Noes, seconded by Ms. Keene. Any discussion? All right, so all those in favor of the amendments as presented, vote green. Opposed, vote red. Motion passes 7-0. Now we're back on ordinance number 1523 as amended. Any discussion? Ms. Golden, good so far?
Yes, indeed.
All right, if no discussion, all those in favor of ordinance 1523 as amended, vote green. Opposed, vote red. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, any other old business to come before the board, Ms. Moody? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to new business. Item number 1995, approve and authorize the transfer of $40,533.66 from the fiscal year capital projects fund to the fiscal year 2019 general fund to replace expenses incurred from the city's streetlight LED conversion project. Let me get a motion in the second, and then Ms. Moody, if there's any questions.
Move to approve.
Second.
Proper motion by Mr. Noah, seconded by Ms. Moody. You've got an explanation in your agenda.
Ms. King.
I'm sorry, what did I say?
Ms. Moody seconded.
Ms. King.
And that's funny, I wrote it down.
I was just, I guess, a phrase ahead of myself. I don't know. Is everyone clear on what we're doing? Any discussion? Ms. Moody, do you have anything that you need to add?
No, I would just, as you did, point them to page 85, where Brian Skelton provided kind of an outline of the entire project and all the costs, and this is really the final bill related to this project, and we can close it out.
Which is a very good project. All right, we've got a motion and a second, as provided by Mrs. Keene. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, 1995, vote green. Opposed, vote red. Has everyone voted?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Ordinance number 1524, an ordinance of the City of Tullahoma, Tennessee to amend the zoning ordinance, which is ordinance number 1392, by replacing zoning ordinance Article 4, Section 4, Commercial Districts, with the new Article 4, Section 4, Commercial Districts, and adding the definition for drinking establishments in zoning ordinance Article 2, definitions for passage on the first of 2 readings. So we earlier held a public hearing. No one from the audience addressed the situation. Let me get a motion in a second, then I'll call on Mrs. Moody or her designee for a description.
Motion to approve.
Proper motion by Dr.
Second.
Blank, seconded by Alderman Duncan.
Yes, so this item does 2 things. First, creating a definition for drinking establishments. It's something that was not defined already in the zoning ordinance, but yet there were references made to bars and pubs and things like that. So this consolidates that language and creates a definition for it. The other thing that this does is we've taken a look at the commercial districts, and over time, as different issues have evolved, there are certain uses that have more demands, higher parking requirements, maybe less desirable uses. And what we've done is tried to have compatible uses allowed by right. Some uses not allowed, or have been removed altogether, and then others are here as proposed uses upon review. Those uses upon review allow us to put some conditions that would make them allowable, and the planning commission would make those determinations. If you have any specific questions, Lee Lawson is here with us to answer those. But that's sort of the broad picture.
So the planning commission, this has gone through the planning commission, all the appropriate steps.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? You've heard an explanation.
I'm reading the definition of drinking establishment versus restaurant. If the sales are less than 50% for food or more than 50% for alcohol, then it's a drinking establishment. And vice versa. If it's more than 50% for food, then it's a restaurant. When do you make that decision? At what point do we decide, or do you decide, is it a restaurant or is it a drinking establishment? When does that occur?
Well, that would,
Let me ask you to step to the podium, Mr. Lawson, please.
Well, the main purpose is to distinguish between a restaurant and a drinking establishment.
I understand.
And through my research, that was how a lot of communities did it, was based upon percentage of sale. If we got down to a situation where we needed additional information from the prospective business owner, we would ask them to provide us information of if they've had a business before, if this is going to be the similar type of business, could you, is this what you would classify as a bar or cocktail lounge, or is this a restaurant that's going to be primarily going to be serving food, and drinking would be something that they would do with their meals?
Excuse me, but I didn't understand the answer to my question in your response. Is this decision made before they get their license for opening their restaurant? Or is this determined after they've been in business for a period of time?
Well, this would be determined before we would approve the permit. We would check to see what the use was.
But how do you know whether it's 50% or not if they don't have any record?
We would be asking them to, in good faith, if this was going to be a situation where they were going to have sales above 50% or under 50% of alcohol.
That's the way I would know to do it.
Are there some zoning districts where restaurants are allowed, but drinking establishments are not?
No, currently they would be both allowed in the commercial districts. I don't believe we would allow one in the C3 district, though. Drinking establishment, restaurants.
So maybe the practical use may be just to clarify that both are allowed, if there aren't situations where one is and one isn't.
I think I see what Alderman Lewis is saying. There's no scientific way to draw that line there. But now I can tell the difference if there's an Applebee's or if there's just a bar set up somewhere pretty much. And I know there's more of a drinking going on there, or a restaurant that has, primarily known for their food, and they have a bar, on the side. But I think there are a lot of places that open up that are pretty much, you can tell if they're a bar pretty much to start with. It's going to be a bar or an eating establishment. They're known for their food.
You check these beforehand to see what kind of facilities they're actually going to have at that particular location?
Well, that would be hard because we'd have to know what specific location they were going to be.
And then would you, before you gave them a permit, would you check and see what kind of facilities they were going to have there?
Yes.
Because it's not likely that a bar is going to have the expensive and extensive kitchen facilities that a restaurant would.
No.
I know you can look at any full-scale restaurant and see what they have involved in, investment in the kitchen facility. No bar's going to do all that.
I agree. I think I can tell a restaurant pretty quick that
Yeah, I
as
think
opposed to
so.
a bar, just by looking, going in there. Yeah.
I just know one thing. I'm getting hungry.
Okay, one other question. I missed the point of why we're doing this.
Because we have these terms that are used through our ordinance, we have no definition for them. So this was just to combine them under one definition or one term. I mean, we don't define what bars or pubs are currently, but they are listed as a use by right in the C2 district. So is cocktail lounges.
Well, it seems like after they've been in business for a year, you could quantitatively evaluate whether they were one or the other.
Yeah.
Once you've got some data. Will you be doing
But
that?
wouldn't the business owner know what they're planning on doing? I mean, this is, the part of it would be them letting us know that we intend to sell 50% or more alcohol and do less on the food side.
Well, is there any point then after they've been in business for a while to see, okay, or have you been a bar or have you been a restaurant?
This is just for classification purposes. Like I said before, this is allowed in the C1 and C2 district. This is like restaurants are concerned. This is just merely a way of classifying and defining the use that's already been mentioned in the ordinance. Since it doesn't have a definition, gave it a definition.
Thank you, Ms. Lawson. Any other questions? Everybody ready to vote? All those wishing to vote for the motion is presented by green, opposed, vote red. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, we've got two choices.
Bundle them up.
Bundle them up.
Resolution number 1793 through 1810. I can read each one of these and all the support material as I normally do for each one. It'll probably take about an hour and 20 minutes to do that. Or, if there's no objection, I can just read the caption of all of these and we vote all at one time. So we have an objection. Mr. Mathis, you don't want to do it that way. You want me to read them all, is that right?
I don't want you to read them out.
Well, you were nodding your head. like-
I would like to say that let's take all the financial aid, bundle them in a bundle, and vote right there.
All right, I do have to read the caption, though. So I'll read the caption. 1793, resolution authorizing appropriations for financial aid of Tullahoma Arts Center, Inc. 1794, Tennessee Backroads Heritage. 1795, Tullahoma Area Chamber of Commerce. 1796, Civil Air Patrol. 1797, Community Playhouse, Inc. 1798, Tullahoma Daycare Center. 1799, Coffee County Health Department, Tullahoma Health Center. 1800, Historic Preservation Society. 1801, Hands-On Science Center. 1802, Keep Coffee County Beautiful. 1803, Coffee County Lanham Library. 1804, South Central Human Resource Agency. 1805, Skills Development Services. 1806, South Jackson Civic Center. 1807, Coffee County Senior Citizens, Inc., Tullahoma Center. 1808, Tennessee Rehabilitation Center. 1809, Trinity Care Center. And 1810, Tullahoma Sports Council, Inc. Roland, did I leave any out?
You got them all.
Okay. So you reading the caption of resolution 1793 through 1810. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve financial aid to those entities.
Second.
Proper motion by Mr. Noes, seconded by somebody over here, Alderman Duncan. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, vote green, opposed, vote red. Motion passes 7-0. Mrs. Moody, any other new business? We'll adjourn and go into the beer board portion of the agenda. We have one item of business, 19 BB27, beer application, special event permit for the Tullahoma Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, LP Fly-In. The Tullahoma Airport, Ms. Carla Smith will be manager in charge of beer sales, September 13 and 14. Ms. Golden, everything in order?
We forgot the minutes, but we can finish this first. We're
Oh,
supposed
I
to
did
do
forget,
minutes.
yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
we're on
Motion
this
to
one,
approve.
I
27.
told you I was hungry.
Motion to approve and waive any fee.
Proper motion to approve and waive any fee.
Second.
Second by Mr. Noes. Motion made by Ms. Keen. Any discussion?
I'm excited.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a big deal, isn't it, Mr. Noes? All those in favor, vote green, opposed, vote red. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, we're going to back up. We've got one consent item, 19BB26, minutes of the July 8th Dear Board meeting.
Motion to approve.
Proper motion by Dr.
Second.
Blank, seconded by somebody, Mr.
Yeah.
Ellis. All those in favor? The consent agenda is presented by Green, opposed, vote red.
Jean?
I'd always have these kids at the end of class, like 40 seconds before the bell, and they start putting their stuff in their backpacks. Oh, no, just kind of brought me back.
No
Did you
other
have that?
You gotta be
Did you have
young.
that
You gotta-
40 seconds
No
before the
other,
bell?
no other business, we always done. All those in favor?
What's your point?